High Admiral Zara Vex stood motionless in the observation deck of the Meridian flagship Eternal Dawn, her iridescent scales shifting colors as she processed the data before her. The holographic display showed a small blue planet rotating peacefully in the void, completely unaware of the massive fleet holding position just beyond its detection range. "Most peculiar," she muttered, her dual-pupilled eyes narrowing as she reviewed the preliminary reports. After centuries of executing perfect first contact scenarios with various species across the galaxy, the Meridians had developed an almost scientific approach to introducing themselves to new civilizations. But humans defied every prediction model they had. High Admiral, her chief xenopsychologist, Dr. Kenra, approached with a fresh data tablet. "You need to see this." His tendrils writhed in agitation, a clear sign of distress among their kind. The display shifted to show humans performing various activities: rock climbing without safety equipment, swimming with massive oceanic predators, jumping from perfectly functional aircraft for entertainment, running toward dangers instead of away from them. "Are they malfunctioning?" Zara Vex asked, genuinely puzzled. "Perhaps their risk assessment capabilities are compromised." "No, High Admiral. Their cognitive functions appear fully intact. They simply choose this behavior." Kenra's voice carried a note of fascination mixed with horror. "They actively seek out situations that should trigger their fear response, and more bizarrely, they seem to enjoy it." The display showed more scenes: humans exploring deep caves, testing experimental vehicles, and deliberately exposing themselves to frightening experiences in something they called horror movies. "Most species we encounter," Kenra continued, "develop technology to avoid danger. Humans develop technology to pursue it more efficiently." Zara Vex's scales rippled with dark blues of concern. The Meridian approach to first contact had always been based on careful calculation of fear responses. Show enough power to command respect, but not enough to trigger panic. But how do you calibrate such an approach for a species that runs toward explosions to help strangers? "There's more," Kenray added, switching to footage of human entertainment. "They have countless stories about meeting alien life. Some peaceful, many hostile. They'd been imagining and preparing for our existence long before we arrived." "Preparing?" Zara Vex's scales flashed warning orange. "Yes. They call it science fiction. They've simulated countless first contact scenarios. They've imagined everything from peaceful cultural exchange to full-scale invasions. They'd been mentally rehearsing meeting us for generations." The High Admiral watched as the display showed humans rebuilding after disasters, helping strangers in crisis, and facing seemingly impossible odds with determination rather than despair. Their response to fear, she mused, it's not suppression or avoidance. They transform it. "Exactly." Kenra's tendrils rippled with excitement. "When humans encounter something frightening, they don't just face it. They study it, challenge it, sometimes even turn it into entertainment. They have entire industries built around experiencing controlled fear." Zara Vex moved closer to the holographic display, watching a human child laugh while reading a story about monsters. "Our standard protocols won't work here, will they?" "No, High Admiral. Our usual approach relies on manipulating fear responses to establish hierarchical relationships. But humans, they've developed a unique relationship with fear. They acknowledge it, embrace it, and use it as a tool for growth." The High Admiral was quiet for a long moment, her scales cycling through thoughtful patterns of blue and green. Finally, she spoke. "Perhaps it's time we learned from them instead of testing them. Prepare a new contact protocol. No shows of force, no intimidation tactics. What approach would you suggest, High Admiral?" Zara Vex gestured to footage of humans excitedly discussing the possibility of alien life. "They've been waiting for us. Let's not disappoint them." Sometimes, the greatest strength lies not in causing fear, but in helping others overcome it. As the Eternal Dawn's crew began preparing for their unprecedented approach to first contact, Zaravex continued watching the humans going about their daily lives. These beings who turned their fears into achievements, their terrors into triumphs, their nightmares into adventures, they had much to teach the galaxy about courage. The research vessel Curiosity Eternal hovered silently above a small coastal city, its advanced cloaking systems rendering it invisible to Earth's detection methods. Dr. Kenra stood in the observation chamber. Test subject group identified, announced his assistant, Telemo, her scales shifting to the formal patterns of scientific observation. Small gathering of humans in what they call a ghost hunting expedition. Through their monitors, they watched as 5 humans entered an abandoned building, carrying primitive detection equipment and recording devices. The humans' excitement was palpable, their voices animated as they discussed the possibility of encountering supernatural phenomena. Initiating Test Sequence Alpha, Kenra announced, deploying atmospheric fear pheromones. The Meridians had refined these pheromones over centuries of research. They triggered primitive brain responses across nearly every sentient species encountered so far, activating fight-or-flight responses with remarkable consistency. The humans should have been running in terror within seconds. Instead, one of them sneezed and said, "Guys, my EMF meter is going crazy. We might have something here." Kenra's tendrils coiled in confusion, increasing pheromone concentration by 200%. The humans responded by pulling out more recording equipment. One of them, apparently their leader, spoke excitedly into a camera. "The air feels heavy, and there's this weird smell. Classic signs of a paranormal presence. This is incredible." They're documenting it. Telemo's scales flickered with disbelief. Switching to audio frequencies, the ship began emitting low-frequency sounds designed to trigger subconscious panic responses, sounds that had once caused an entire species to abandon their colony world in mass hysteria. "Did you hear that?" one of the humans asked, grinning widely. "Perfect EVP conditions." Someone asked a question. Another human stepped forward confidently. "If there are any spirits here, can you make that sound again?" Kenra stared at his instruments in bewilderment. Their heart rates are elevated, adrenaline levels are rising, but they're enjoying it. Initiating visual phenomena. Shadows began moving against the laws of physics. Strange lights flickered in impossible patterns. Forms appeared and disappeared at the edge of vision. Appearances carefully crafted to trigger primal fears of predators and the unknown. The humans responded by taking pictures. Lots of pictures. "This is going viral," one exclaimed, already uploading footage to something called social media. "Best investigation ever." Dr. Kenra. Telemo's voice carried a note of concern. "Other humans are arriving. They're setting up recording equipment outside. Some are broadcasting live." Indeed, the scene outside the building had transformed into something the Meridians had never witnessed in all their years of species observation. Instead of a panic-induced evacuation, humans were gathering. Some had brought chairs and food, treating the manifestation of their worst fears as some sort of social event. "Fascinating," Kenra murmured, his scientific curiosity overriding his frustration. "They've taken a fear stimulus and transformed it into entertainment, a community experience." A new voice crackled through their monitors, a human female speaking professionally into a camera. "We're live at what locals are calling the most significant paranormal event in the city's history. Paranormal investigation teams from 3 states are en route, and #Haunted Harbor Street is trending nationwide. Should we terminate the experiment?" Telemo asked, her scales showing patterns of uncertainty. Kenra watched as the humans below continued their methodical documentation of phenomena that should have reduced them to terrified immobility. They were measuring, recording, theorizing, and most remarkably, laughing. "No," he decided, "we're not terminating. We're learning. Send all data to High Admiral Zaravex. The humans aren't just resistant to fear stimuli. They're transforming fear into discovery, into connection, into progress. As the night continued, the Meridians watched in amazement as their carefully crafted fear experiment transformed into what the humans were calling the paranormal event of the year. Their test subjects had not only faced their fears, but had turned them into an opportunity for scientific investigation, social bonding, and what appeared to be genuine enjoyment. Perhaps, Kenra mused, his tendrils swaying thoughtfully, we've been asking the wrong question. Instead of studying how humans respond to fear, we should be studying how they transform it into something else entirely. Above the growing crowd of excited humans, the Curiosity Eternal continued its observation, its crew slowly realizing that they might not be the only ones conducting experiments that night. In their eagerness to study humanity, they had somehow become part of humanity's endless quest to understand the unknown. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her computer screen in the basement of the SETI Institute, her coffee long forgotten. The data patterns she was seeing couldn't be natural phenomena. They were too regular, too precise. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she cross-referenced the signals with known celestial objects. "Dr. Harrison," she called out, her voice echoing through the quiet facility. "You need to see this." The aging director of research hurried over, his usual skepticism melting away as he examined the readings. "How long have you been tracking these anomalies?" 3 weeks, Sarah replied, pulling up more data. "At first I thought it was instrument error, but look at this pattern. It's deliberate. Something is trying very hard not to be seen, and in doing so, it's becoming visible." Meanwhile, aboard the Eternal Dawn, High Admiral Zara Vex received an urgent communication from her stealth fleet. "High Admiral," her tactical officer reported, scales pulsing with anxiety. "The humans' detection capabilities are evolving. They're starting to notice the gaps in their data where our ships should be." "Explain," Zara Vex commanded, her dual pupils contracting. "They're becoming aware of our presence not by seeing us, but by seeing where things should be but aren't. Their scientific institutions are beginning to note systematic anomalies in their observations." Back on Earth, the scientific community was quietly buzzing with excitement. In universities and research centers across the globe, similar data patterns were being identified. Instead of panic, there was a surge of methodical investigation. Dr. Chen found herself at the center of a global collaboration. Scientists from different fields began contributing their observations, astronomers noting strange gravitational lensing effects, meteorologists reporting unexplainable atmospheric disturbances, marine biologists detecting unusual patterns in deep-sea readings. They're coordinating their efforts, Dr. Kenra reported to High Admiral Zara Vex, his tendrils writhing with a mixture of admiration and concern. Instead of competing, their scientific institutions are sharing data freely. They're crowdsourcing their investigation of us. The High Admiral watched as humans across the planet began piecing together the puzzle of their presence. But instead of the fear and chaos their models had predicted, she saw something else emerging: preparation. In Japan, engineers began developing new types of sensors based on the anomalies they detected. In Europe, linguists started creating potential communication protocols. In Africa, astronomers repurposed their telescopes to search for the distinctive void patterns their cloaked ships created. "They're not afraid," Zara Vex realized aloud. "They're excited." The evidence of alien presence sparked a wave of human creativity. Artists began creating works inspired by the mysterious signals. Writers published stories speculating about first contact. Children in schools discussed what they would say to aliens if they met them. "High Admiral," her chief of security interrupted, "we've intercepted something troubling. The humans are broadcasting a message directly at us." The message was being transmitted on multiple frequencies, in various formats. It was elegant in its simplicity: prime numbers, mathematical constants, and a repeating phrase in hundreds of Earth languages. "We see you. We're ready. Let's talk." Dr. Chen smiled as she sent another transmission into space. The message contained no threats, no demands, just an open invitation for dialogue. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for this moment through their stories, their sciences, and their imagination. In her command center, Zara Vex's scales shifted through patterns of deep thought. The humans had not only detected them despite their advanced stealth technology, but they had also turned that detection into a global cooperative effort. They hadn't responded with fear to the realization that they were being watched. They had responded with curiosity, preparation, and an extended hand of greeting. Their ability to unite in the face of the unknown, she mused, to transform uncertainty into initiative. We've never seen anything like it. The Meridian leaders faced a decision they had never encountered before: how to respond to a species that had discovered them. And, instead of preparing for war or cowering in fear, had essentially invited them to dinner. Perhaps, Zara Vex announced to her command staff, "It's time we stopped hiding. These humans, they're offering us something our species has forgotten how to do, facing the unknown with hope instead of fear." As the humans' messages continued to pulse through space, the Meridian fleet held position, watching a species that had turned their careful observation into an opportunity for growth. The watchers had become the watched, and in the process, they were learning that sometimes the greatest discoveries come not from studying fear, but from embracing the courage to make contact. When the Meridian High Command finally decided to make their presence known, they chose to follow their centuries-old protocol for establishing first contact dominance. Their massive flagship, the Eternal Dawn, decloaked directly above New York City, its crystalline structure casting prismatic shadows across the urban landscape. Smaller vessels emerged from stealth around other major cities worldwide, creating a display of overwhelming technological superiority. High Admiral Zara Vex stood ready to deliver the carefully crafted speech that had brought countless civilizations into the galactic fold through carefully calculated intimidation. But before she could begin, her communications officer's tendrils twisted in confusion. "High Admiral." They're celebrating. Indeed, instead of the expected panic, humans were flooding into the streets below, phones raised to capture images of the ships. In Times Square, someone had already started playing the theme from Close Encounters of the Third Kind over massive speakers. Street vendors were quickly printing "I survived first contact" t-shirts. Deploying the sonic resonance arrays, Zara Vex ordered, following protocol despite her growing uncertainty. The ships began emitting low-frequency pulses designed to instill a sense of awe and submission. Within minutes, humans had not only recorded these sounds but remixed them into dance music. Flash mobs formed beneath the ships, dancing to the alien beat. In Berlin, a techno club had already announced an alien invasion rave. Dr. Kendra burst onto the bridge, his scales flickering with urgency. "High Admiral, you need to see this. The humans, they're organizing welcoming committees. They're preparing cultural exchange programs. Universities are offering instant grants for xenological studies. Someone called Twitter is overwhelmed with humans volunteering to be alien ambassadors." On their monitors, they watched as Dr. Sarah Chen appeared on global news networks, calmly explaining how her team had detected the Meridian presence weeks ago. "We've been preparing for this moment," she said, smiling into the cameras. "The real question isn't whether we're ready for them, but whether they're ready for us." Ready for them. Zara Vex's scales shifted to patterns of bewilderment. "We're supposed to be testing them." The situation grew more confounding by the minute. The humans had somehow interpreted their intimidation display as an invitation for cultural exchange. Museums were hastily preparing exhibitions on human history. Orchestras were arranging concerts to welcome our cosmic visitors. Restaurants were creating speculative alien-friendly menus. "High Admiral," the tactical officer reported, "the humans are requesting docking procedures. They want to send up welcoming delegations. They're asking about dietary restrictions and cultural taboos. Someone called NASA is offering technical assistance in case our ships need maintenance after our long journey." Zaravex watched in amazement as humanity transformed what was supposed to be a demonstration of meridian dominance into what the humans were calling the greatest party in Earth's history. Their carefully planned shock and awe campaign had somehow become a global festival of interspecies cooperation. "They've completely misunderstood our intentions," Dr. Kenray observed, his tendrils waving in fascination. "No," Zaravex replied, her scales shifting to thoughtful hues. "Perhaps we misunderstood theirs. All this time, we thought we were studying them, testing them, but they were preparing to welcome us." The monitors showed scenes from around the world, children drawing pictures of alien friends, scientists eagerly preparing research proposals, diplomats drafting welcoming speeches, chefs experimenting with new fusion cuisines. The humans had taken what should have been a moment of fear and turned it into an opportunity for growth, learning, and celebration. A message from the United Nations appeared on their screens. "On behalf of humanity, we welcome our galactic neighbors. We have so many questions, so much to share, so much to learn from each other. Shall we begin?" High Admiral Zaravex looked at her ceremonial speech of dominance, then at the scenes of joyful celebration below. With a gesture that would change the course of galactic history, she deleted the speech. "Sometimes," she announced to her crew, "the greatest victory comes not from conquering fear, but from learning to see through it. Prepare for peaceful contact. It seems we have much to learn from these humans about facing the unknown with hope instead of fear." As the eternal dawn prepared to receive its first human visitors, Zaravex couldn't help but wonder who was really teaching about civilization. The species they had come to test had instead taught them a profound lesson about the power of transforming fear into curiosity, threat into opportunity, and first contact into a celebration of shared discovery. 6 months after first contact, High Admiral Zaravex stood before the Grand Council of Meridian Elders, her scales shifting through patterns that had no precedent in their species' long history. Colors of transformation and wonder. "Honorable elders," she began, "I come before you to propose something unprecedented. We must fundamentally change our approach to interspecies relations, and we must learn this new approach from the humans." The chamber filled with murmurs of shock, scales flickering in disbelief. Elder Senko, her tendrils gray with age, leaned forward. "You suggest we learn from a species that has barely reached its own moon." Zaravex gestured, and holographic displays filled the chamber with scenes from the past 6 months. Humans and Meridians working together in research laboratories, their different approaches to problem-solving yielding breakthrough after breakthrough. Cultural exchange programs where human children taught Meridian scientists about imagination while learning advanced physics. Artists from both species collaborating to create entirely new forms of expression. "They've achieved more in understanding us in 6 months than we achieved in studying them for years," Dr. Kenray added, stepping forward to join his admiral. "Their approach to the unknown, this combination of curiosity, creativity, and courage, it's revolutionary." The displays showed more. Humans teaching Meridians about storytelling, about facing fears through art and narrative. Meridian scientists learning to approach problems not just with logic, but with intuitive leaps inspired by human creativity. Joint space exploration missions where human ingenuity complemented Meridian technology in unexpected ways. But most importantly, Zaravex continued, "They've taught us something we had forgotten in our millennia of evolution. Fear isn't just something to be conquered or controlled. It's a tool for growth, a catalyst for connection, a doorway to understanding." The chamber filled with scenes from the Cultural Fear Exchange Program, where humans and Meridians shared their species' deepest fears, not to exploit them, but to understand and grow from them. Humans learning to appreciate the Meridian fear of chaos by creating beautiful patterns in art therapy. Meridians learning to embrace uncertainty through human adventure sports and exploration. "They've changed us." Dr. Chen's recorded voice echoed through the chamber as she addressed a joint scientific conference. "And we've changed them. But isn't that the point of contact between civilizations? Not to dominate or submit, but to grow together. Elder Senko's scales shifted to deep contemplation colors. You're suggesting we abandon our traditional protocols. Protocols that have served us for millennia. No, Zaravex replied. I'm suggesting we evolve them. The humans have shown us that true strength lies not in the absence of fear, but in how we transform it. They've taught us that the unknown isn't just something to be studied or conquered. It's something to be embraced, explored, and celebrated. The displays showed final scenes. Joint human meridian expeditions preparing to explore uncharted regions of space, not with trepidation, but with excitement. The first class of human students beginning their studies at the Meridian Academy of Sciences, bringing their unique perspective to age-old questions. Meridian artists learning human music, discovering how harmony could emerge from what they once perceived as chaos. We came to Earth thinking we would test humanity's response to fear, Zaravex concluded, her scales glowing with conviction. Instead, they tested our understanding of courage. They showed us that the greatest discoveries come not from careful observation, but from daring to engage. Not from maintaining safe distances, but from reaching out across the void between species. The council chamber fell silent, filled only with the soft humming of holographic displays showing scenes of human and meridian cooperation. Finally, Elder Senko rose, her ancient scales shifting to a new pattern, one that spoke of hope and change. Perhaps, she announced, it is time for us to be students rather than observers. Time for us to learn this human art of transforming fear into friendship, uncertainty into opportunity, and first contact into lasting bonds. As the Council began drafting new protocols for interspecies relations, protocols based on mutual learning rather than dominance, High Admiral Zaravex's scales shifted to a pattern of deep satisfaction. The humans had taught them that the greatest power lay not in creating fear, but in helping others overcome it. Together, both species had discovered that true courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about being willing to embrace the unknown, learn from each other, and grow beyond their limitations. The age of observation was over. The age of participation had begun.